Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Soulganize Your Life, where we spend a half hour talking to someone in process of discerning their ego, which we usually organize our lives around our ego. And we don't know it, but there's another way to do it. And it's to soulganize your life around your soul and its best interests for you. So, how do we discern that? Well, the ego is going to tell you that you're not enough. The ego is going to tell you that you can only be confident if you make something of yourself, if you are recognized for achievements, if you gain more possessions and make more money. And the soul is going to be opposite. It's going to be asking you to just listen in and see what makes you happy, and to see where it could guide you to do some deeper learning about who you are in this world. And so, again, the ego is going to tell you to buckle down and control life and control other people and don't trust them. But the soul is going to constantly be knocking at your door in some way, sometimes just with a whisper and sometimes with a smack over the head. But it's there. And the purpose of this podcast is to help just keep flushing those two things out and bring a contrast so that you can make a better informed decision about how you want to organize or soulganize your life. And once we make these efforts, we can see that a lot of times the ego is causing us suffering. And, to transcend that, we often need some other way to do that. And usually it's a higher power of some sort. And that's, again, what we're here to flesh out in just a half-hour conversation. And our guest is here to help us do that. Tamara, thank you so much for coming. Just a little bit about her. I met her because she asked me to do a podcast during COVID. And, we'd never met each other before, but we crossed each other's paths. And, it was really cool that she at the time was a wellness coach, and she was helping people to understand how to better care for themselves. And then noticed that during COVID, she recognized that the societal ego, that I would call it, was only instilling fear in us and not helping us to understand what our soul could do to help guide us towards healthier choices during that crazy time. So thank you so much for doing that podcast. She ended up doing, you said 75 episodes. Thank you so much. And so it still can be found, right? Your podcast?
Yeah, it's still out there. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much for doing that. And I'm still babbling about you. So jump on it.
Yeah. Hi. Well, thank you for having me. And I know my name can be said many ways, but it's my mom pronounced it Tamara. So yeah. So thank you for this conversation. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about, again, you said to me before we started recording, you're not much of a rule follower, but when did you first encounter what I would psychologically call the ego? And how did you discern that?
Okay. I was thinking about that when you asked that. Maybe when I was little, I'm the second born, or I shouldn't say that. I'm the third born. My parents did have a baby between my older sister and me, who died he had SIDS and died in his crib at 13 months old. So that was pretty traumatic. And but my sister and I have an older sister and a younger sister and a younger brother, and there's a lot of age gaps in there. And so we all kind of grew up a little on our own, I'd say. And I was really fortunate that in fourth grade, I was in an accelerated learning program. And so it was fourth and fifth graders. And then again, in fifth grade, I was invited to do that again. And I think that was the first time that I kind of recognized in myself that I have an easy time with school. And I'm an independent thinker, and that I can be trusted to do my work without, much prodding. I love to read and research things. And I think that's really served me well in my life.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing about the ego. At first, when we're creating it, it will serve us for sure.
Yeah.
It can often cause us a lot of success, right? To your point. And I know you said you had some great success as a youngster. So speak more about that.
Yeah. So then when I was in eighth grade, I was selected to be the salutatorian of my eighth grade class. And that means I was the second highest academic student that year. And I got to do a speech for my class, and which was really cool, I think, as a send-off for us as we were going to be entering high school.
Yeah.
Again, just that, honor to be selected that way. And so I went into high school really having a lot of plans for myself. I knew I wanted to get good grades. I wanted to go to college. I grew up in Rockford, and it's a pretty depressed community in many ways. It's a lot of small businesses, but not a lot of big industry. And I did go to Catholic high school and middle school because the school system often, struggles. So I really had big plans for myself. I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to, earn a good living. And so I did that. I have always been really interested in psychology. So at first I thought I wanted to be a therapist. And I decided at the end to study business and psychology and to pursue a career in HR. But I also was really lucky to go on a foreign quarter abroad to Asia. And I'm really interested in other cultures and just people in general. And, I love the food culture. I love the scenery. I love just learning about, people and their traditions and kind of what makes them tick. So I think, I was really fortunate to have a nice upbringing and a great launch.
Yeah. And so a lot of those viewpoints, right? Like good grades will help me be successful and so forth, kept building you as a successful person, right? And then you're traveling, you're meeting other people, and probably totally unaware, maybe, although you took psychology, that there was such a thing as the ego. Or when did you come across it?
Yeah, I definitely, I did study, so definitely from a theoretical standpoint, I understood ego. Of course, I didn't accomplish every goal. I had my hurdles or my challenges. So, sometimes you do have to, stumble a little bit. And I would say I did that. But I did go on to have a really nice career in human resources. And I think my ego, I guess where I came across that again was after motherhood. I had 2 kids back to back. They're only 16 months apart. We had moved to Minneapolis and we didn't have any family nearby. So I was working full time and having 2 little babies.
Oh, wow.
That was a big challenge, to accept that I really was having a hard time juggling all this. And I was just worn out. I feel like I did a good job at work and I did my best as a mom, but I was just tired. And I think my husband and I recognized that maybe we needed to come back. We have a really big family and that our kids would miss out on meeting and knowing their cousins and grandparents and aunts and uncles. So we moved back, but it is humbling to recognize that, life is hard. And so we came back and I decided to stay home for a little bit. I wasn't planning to make that, a long thing because again, I really loved my career. I had also gone on to get a master's degree in organizational behavior. So I continued on that interest in culture. And so here I was using it in industry, what are the cultures of companies and things like that. But yeah, so I ended up staying home and that was really hard too, because, again, you work really hard, you see your career moving upward and then you decide to take a career break and all of a sudden, I'm sure other stay-at-home moms would say too that, as rewarding as it is, it's also kind of gets to be very routine and there's a lot of time that you're alone. Yeah. And so you need to find things to do to make you feel like you're really a member of society and making a contribution outside the home.
Yeah. So would you say that was sort of the first time your ego was confronted with your plan, right? Like the plan is I just keep going forward. I just keep moving. Like I just keep growing in my career. I just keep getting more degrees. And then there was motherhood and you realize like there's more to me than just me, right? There's these children and community and things to admit, right? Sort of that I, it sounds like you're like, I need that support. I can't do everything. And that's, like you said, for a lot of mothers who work, it's hard to come to terms with that and then not feel like you've failed at some level because you're stepping away from your growth at work. Right. So, yeah. So that sort of contrast though, it was that sort of, did you feel like that was a whisper from your soul at all? Did you feel like the soul was kind of encouraging you to go back to family and community and you listen? Like, what would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, I guess moving back, my husband's new job required him to travel and to commute a pretty decent distance. We lived in South Naperville, and it was an hour and 45 minutes for him to get to work each way.
Wow.
So when he was at work, it was like he was out of town. It's not like I could call him last minute in a crisis and have him, be able to get home to me fast. So, or even rely on him to pick up the kids to take them places or anything like that. So, it caused me to stay home longer. And I definitely think it was sort of a spiritual thing to accept that while, the choices that we've made to live as far out away from the city as we did, in the meantime, we decided to have a third child, which was wonderful too. But, we kept making choices that kept making me stay home.
Yeah.
And then what happened is when my youngest son was 5 or 6, I was like, okay, now I really want to go back to work. I'm really missing this. And so I joined the junior league, and I thought, I want to meet other working moms. I need to, create a bigger network. And so I did that. And, God does have a plan, and sometimes it's very contrasted with your own plan, but it turns out that shortly after that, 2 out of 3 of my kids were diagnosed with an autoimmune condition.
Oh my goodness.
And they were diagnosed 2 weeks apart from each other. So I was faced with another choice. And I think ego was a very, very big thing for me here, is that I often think if one child had been diagnosed, that maybe I would have trusted that I could hire someone who would be able to take care of my kids in my absence. But I thought with 2 of them in need, that just was a big ask. Wow. And my ego was that I'm the best person to take care of them. That I will, I love them and I will do everything that I can, where another person, would do their best, but it's a little bit different. And so I abandoned my plans to go back to work and decided that I really needed to see them through their childhood and make sure that they were healthy and that they could go to school and play sports and participate in all the things that kids are supposed to be doing.
Well, yeah. And I would say, that sounds like in some ways, a non-egoic viewpoint, where you recognize that you are more than just yourself and your own goals, right? But you're part of your family, and that you are going to love them more than anyone else is going to love those kids. And is that what set you on your health and wellness journey?
Yeah. So I've always been somebody who doesn't really take medication. Like I don't take an aspirin. If I have a headache, I'll take a shower, I'll drink some more water, I'll go on a walk. So the challenge for me was, if they have to take a medication to keep their symptoms in remission, then we need to find out what else we can do to keep their body in balance. Because that really terrified me, that they were going to be dependent on this for the rest of their life. So I did engage in a year-long health coaching certification, really for them. At first, it really wasn't to build a new job. Wow. And I did immerse myself in webinars and books. And I was very fortunate to be able to meet really interesting people that focused on healing, not just on managing sick care and symptoms, but truly, wholeness. And I will say, even our gastroenterologist, because they have Crohn's disease, we had a cruise planned. And I said, oh my gosh, healthy people go on a cruise and get sick. Like, how could we possibly take these kids on a cruise? And I was very grateful. Our gastroenterologist said, oh my gosh, you cannot let this diagnosis stop you from doing all the things that you want to do. Wow. And that's really what I needed to hear. And my kids, are much older now, obviously, and they've gone on semester abroad. They've traveled the world. They've, participated in sports at a very high level. They went to school every day and hardly had a sick day. They have blooming careers now. So we did take that to heart, that this diagnosis was just one little aspect of their life, and that it can be very challenging to manage sometimes, but that they're way bigger than that, and that their future's bright. So,
wow. What's so beautiful about what you're saying is, the soul itself is sometimes an internal struggle where you feel alone and you're listening to these 2 voices. But it sounds like over your life, like you understood that there's outer forces and that God does have a plan, and that you're drawn towards these things, and then God just brings in the right people and the right circumstances to keep you on this path of health and wellness rather than disease. The focus. And I think that's makes sense to me now why you were so easily decided to start a podcast during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're just like, well, no one's talking about anything other than the fear agenda, which that was obvious to me, that it was such a psychological warfare on people to inflate egos, to make them afraid of each other, to make them hate each other, to make them, isolate. It was just, to me, it was such a psychological thing. And then to your point, you're like, oh, well, I'll just start a podcast and I'll encourage people to do the things they can do to be healthy, which no one was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, like, truthfully, and they still aren't really saying that. They're still saying get a COVID/flu vaccine, even though people like you were great about, sharing information. I was in a vitamin D study and it never got to finish. They shut it down for some reason.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I decided I was going to do that. And that was through University of Chicago. I'm like, well, I'm still helping. Like, I'm not this evil villain or anything. It's, it's interesting though, because a lot of my guests talk about how the ego and the soul it's a struggle and it's a lot of suffering, which is how I experience it. But I feel like you're kind of telling a little different spin on, as soon as you open up yourself at all to better guidance, it comes to you, and it comes to you in different people rather than a lot of fear. And I think that's also an interesting thing to point out to people that might be listening, that sometimes you might be one of those people who are like, yeah, as soon as I opened up, man, the synchronicities were awesome. And I trusted the plan, and I keep trusting the plan. And to your point, it's, you had all of your choices seem to have built such beautiful family, and also to build a podcast that anybody at any time can go back and listen to. There's 75 episodes, and so it's beautiful. And then you transitioned again.
Well, when my youngest son went away to college, I thought, oh, now is my chance. Now I can go back to my original passion for human resources. And I especially love the recruiting piece. Again, I feel like my life has really been kind of in support of other people accomplishing their goals. I think as much as when I was young, I thought I'll be the VP of HR back then. I thought I'll be the the top. I don't think that's God's plan for me, is to be, the one who makes the most money, the one who has the title, the one leading the charge in a big way. I think I'm a more quiet leader. And they do say, behind every successful person, there is somebody, taking care and encouraging them. And I do kind of think that's who I am.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's disappointing to me because it's not who I thought I was, but I think God's continuing to show me that that's who I am. And it is a struggle. It is a struggle to accept that because, we all want to be the author. We want to be the singer. We want to be the one at the podium, but we're not all meant to be that person. And we have to keep accepting kind of the gifts that we have and, how we can show up in the world.
That lovely viewpoint, is so much less suffering than if you had said from the beginning, I'm head down, I'm going to be the VP, no matter what it costs, no matter, we're not going to move. Our kids aren't going to have, they're going to be taken care of by someone else. Like, there's so many things, if you look back on your life, I'm sure, that I would call your soulganizing. You were calling it God's plan, right? Like you just listened. You didn't make a big deal about it, and that's amazing. And to your point, you said, and I would hear my ego remind me of a plan, and apparently though, you are getting to live that plan now because you're now a job transition coach, which sounds super fulfilling to you because you're working with all ages of people from college to seasoned professionals, and you are there. So even, God's plan could be just, well, wait till it's the right time, then you get to do that after you did all those other wonderful choices that were of a higher divinely inspired place. So anyway, I want to give you a chance to talk about what you're doing now, because this is where people could even so you're more interested in working with people on careers again than the wellness that you were doing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people will always be drawn to me for health and wellness, and I hope that that I can be an example and a resource for them always. But I am really enjoying helping people with their career right now, and so I am working for the People's Resource Center as a volunteer. And the people that come to them are people who've been laid off or had to quit jobs, for a variety of reasons, mental and emotional health, physical health. Maybe they got laid off and, are really ready to get back into things. But I also have had the luxury and opportunity to coach a lot of other people, in my life, friends and family. And, of course, I have a lot of nieces and nephews, so I'm always talking to young people about jobs as well. And I think the job search process has changed so much because of technology. And in many ways, that's nice because technology makes it possible for you to do things electronically. So it's nice for the candidate. I also got to go back for one contract cycle with a local company, and do recruiting from the inside. So that, I think, gives me another fresh perspective on things. And, from the company's standpoint, it's nice as well. The technology is supporting them and looking at candidates. But the process is different. In the olden days, we wrote cover letters, sent a resume, and we might have been one of 20 people applying for a job or 100 people applying for a job. Now we're part of a bigger system where it's so easy to hit the apply button and attach a resume that people will apply for jobs. I had one young person say, I applied for 400 jobs last month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that's not really applying for a job, what you did. So I would love to spend a couple minutes talking about what is a job search, and I was very tickled. There's a company called Huron Consulting, and they even, in their job posting, I want to read this, they called this out, and I'm so happy that this is a pro tip from Huron, and it says, do not apply before networking first. A blind online application is how you instantly kill your chances in a competitive industry like consulting. You want to talk to current consultants in the role and the office you will apply to. One, to get an insider perspective on life at the firm, which helps you stand out in interviews. And two, to build advocates at the firm that can vouch for your application.
Wow.
And I really, think that's where the job search starts. So if, an individual says, I really want to be a financial analyst, if they're a young person, then they need to reach out to all the people in their life, and really think broadly about who's young that I know, who's middle-aged that I know, who's older that I know, who are my personal connections, and then who are my parents' connections, my neighbors' connections, and really cast a wide net to say, who can help me with this? To get a firm understanding of what does the role mean, and then what does it mean in a large Fortune 500 company? What does it mean in a mid-sized company? What does it mean in a small company? And then when you find actual companies you want to apply for, then go and then do the next level search to find someone. And again, it can be someone you personally know, or it can be someone that, maybe a second or third level connection to you. But take that time to really do a good job, because having someone vouch for you makes all the difference. And
yeah. I was just gonna say, it's so beautiful what you're saying, because to your point, like, what college grad would know this? I mean, I only know to do the 400 resumes someone's going to hit. And you're basically talking, my dad said what you just said to me, like, well, who do you know, who you shake hands with, like that kind of thing. And that's so foreign probably to especially younger people who think it's all just an electronic game.
But actually I want to remind young people that they've actually been trained to do this. They just don't see the connection. And so I really want to draw this connection that, when kids, Chromebooks have been around now, since my 29-year-old were, going into middle school. So, kids got an electronic, device to use. They got a syllabus. Yeah. Then the teacher said, this is what we're going to cover in the class. And here's all your resources. Here's links to different things that you can use for learning. And, kids always would think about who's a year ahead of me that maybe took this class before, had this teacher. Like in the school environment, from probably 6th grade through college, kids are really savvy about utilizing their resources, maybe even getting old tests to review. Like they're pretty smart about being resourceful. So I want to ask them to apply that same thing here in their job search. Because that's where, they've already had the training. They just need to think about the connection to what I'm saying. And so, yes. So here you see a job posting, you see what that says, then you can go to the link of the company, dig a little bit to learn more about the company, then find people that work there that you may know or someone knows, have a conversation with them. And finally, by the time you're writing a cover letter and submitting an application, you should be able to really see the connection between what you have to offer and how you can apply that in that company.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I really think, kids,
when you're coaching them, you're helping them to discern their gifts already. You already have these gifts.
Yeah.
You've already done this somewhere else. You just are making the conscious connection for them.
Mm-hmm.
They've already done this. The last question I want to ask you is, do you do any work to help those people discern between this is what I was told to do and my ego, wants me to do versus maybe like to your point, like there's a plan from God or you're in touch with your higher self at some level and you can use that to discern better how to find a job because obviously God wants us to work. We all agreed to work. We all agreed to, this is our society. So I don't think it's any less spiritual to work, right? Or to have a job.
I always coach people that it is, cliche, I guess, to say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
But I really do think that's true, that, you have to go with what are you naturally good at and drawn to. And even though it doesn't make you as much money initially, it will sustain you longer in your life. If you go for the job that's just the high paying job, so many people will study accounting, for example, because it's such a secure, job, or they'll go into insurance because that's secure. But they won't stay because it doesn't capture their heart. Yeah. So I would say do something that you're drawn to, and, eventually you will learn enough and you'll find ways that you can use that expertise to make more money if money is your thing that you're, trying to achieve. So
to your point, the ego might tell you to do what's stable or to do what you can pridefully say I do, versus the soul, which, you said, I think you said it's the sort of the life force that's beating your heart, what's making you jump, what's making you excited. Like it's okay to follow that. It's okay to, and then if you're following that, you sound like you have a really practical way of helping someone see all the doors they could open and all the resources they have to find that, which probably doesn't feel like that, especially as someone who's young.
Yeah. I would definitely. And I really think that another thing with young people is continuous learning is very, very important. And I will say that as I've watched my own children and my nieces and nephews and other family friends enter the workforce right now, their start is a little slow, where companies don't have enough work for them to do, maybe for the first 90 days, it's a slow ramp up because people are still working hybrid. And, but I think the onus is on the young professional to continue to reach out to people, to ask for work, but also if there isn't work to be asked for, then to arrange coffee dates with people in their company, people in their sphere of influence, to really continue to just gain more experience. And so initiative is super important. You can't sit back and wait for someone else to do it for you. You've got to take that initiative and get yourself out there. Ask someone if there's a book I can read that would be good for me. Ask, is there a certification course I can take? I know MBAs and master's programs are not as common right now, which is fine, but you can still learn new skills and apply them. And you may not see, a pay increase because you got that initially, but eventually you'll be able to apply that new knowledge, that new confidence in your job, and it will pay off in the long run.
Wow. So it sounds like you could help someone maybe listening to this podcast that is either looking for a job as a recent, adult, first time adulting, or also just encourage them to keep pursuing what, like once they have a job, it sounds like you could also help them to keep formulating, like, what's your path? How are you owning this? How are you making this your own experience rather than waiting for things to come to you? Which is great. So if someone wanted to work with you, how would they find you?
Yeah. I would ask them just to connect with me on LinkedIn, and we'll explore, what they're looking for and if I can be a resource to them personally, or if I can connect them with other people.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you sound very, honestly, like selfless. You sound like so much of your journey for the past couple decades has been to just truly support people. Like you said, just in the background and feel fulfilled by that. And I'm sure you've learned a lot about yourself in that way, and so, yeah, it's a joy to talk to you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Yep. Bye-bye.